and moves were made. Hands were shook, money exchanged hands, possibly drugs. But it was all good. It was all in the name of fantasy football.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dynasty. Like I said, we all see things differently.
Put it on his shirt.
I just drank what tasted like a root beer, but now I'm feeling kind of tipsy.
Ride that unicorn, my friend.
Most looking forward to playing
Robin.
because he's such a turd.
I was really going to do an awful Mexican accent, and I realized how mad I'd be at someone else for doing that. So, hi.
We all are very intrigued and very interested in what will happen this year.
It's Friday, August 25th, 1:17 in the PM. It's the Dynasty podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This is Peter Livingston. This is the fantasy football podcast in which 12 friends wait for the weekend of August 27th in which to draft so that 16 weeks later we can all hate and despise one individual. That's right, it is draft weekend for the Dynasty, and people are excited. I think this is universally kind of considered draft weekend in terms of fantasy football. But this is our 5th year doing this keeper league, this keeper league that we call the Dynasty. And I'm excited. I was feeling a little bit burnt out doing all the stuff the past few weeks, but got reinvigorated when we had some awesome content that was provided in both artistic and in the video medium. Scott made a really cool hype video and also a draft preview video. And it was a lot of fun, and it inspired me to make one. So I, in turn, made a hype video for the upcoming season. So I think everybody's kind of really getting excited. This episode came by request of our commissioner. Our commissioner said, "Hey, why don't you do one more mock?" I'm kind of like, all right, we'll see. And I decided I may as well do it. I may as well do one. But like I said, for those of you listening that aren't part of the league, this is our 5th season. We are a keeper league. It's called the Dynasty because, we tend to keep everybody together, and it's not a traditional Dynasty league where you just get to keep a player forever and ever and ever. But this is a keeper league, and today we will be doing a mock in which I'll go through, I think, the first 3 rounds. Only because after that it just gets a little convoluted in terms of keepers because there are so many keepers. And one thing that a lot of you will notice is that, especially in this draft, or if you follow any keepers or are involved with any keepers, the first few rounds aren't like your typical standard fantasy football draft. There are a lot of gaps. There are a lot of missing pieces. So excuse me, you're going to find a lot of this mock where people are going to be going in the first round, or maybe you think they should go in the third or even the second, and vice versa. People in the second and the third that you maybe would find in the 5th round or 6th round. And some people fall where they will because we're starting to get a little bit more turnover in the talent pool that's coming back to us. So some people fall in about the spot that you would expect them to. So it's really going to be interesting to see where people go. I've been poring over this off and on. I made a couple of changes. One thing that I do know is that this is there because of the trades that have happened and events that have occurred in the NFL itself. When I talk about trades, I mean trades within our league. We had a couple of major trades in which people moved up into positions, and I'll briefly recap those. But between that and stuff like the Ezekiel Elliott punishment, which as of right now stands at 6 games, will he appeal it? Will we see a little bit of the Tom Brady thing that happened a few years ago? where he was able to play the year out and then the penalty was enforced the next year? Or will it just be shortened? Will they bring it back a little bit? Will it be 4 games or 3 games, or will it stay at 6? There's so many questions, and that alone has completely thrown off our entire first round, and in many ways throws off a lot of the other rounds too, because like I said, there's been a lot of trades, a lot of movements, a lot of people moving up, a lot of people moving back, people with multiple first round picks, people with multiple second round picks. It's been extremely, extremely volatile. So I guess with that being said, it's time to get into it. I'll do my mock, and we'll see how I do. I will be doing a live recording on Sunday at the commissioner's house. We'll be doing it around 2 p.m. I'll probably do some stuff beforehand. I still got to get my interview done. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying the interview stuff that I've been doing with the league. Again, haven't been able to get everybody this year like last year. But we'll see. Maybe we'll get people to contribute in other ways to throw them on this podcast. So, some of the rules, I've said it before, but again, I want to reiterate it as we dive into this weekend, which is our draft weekend. Some of the rules that we have as a league regarding draft and keepers and picks, etc. So, in terms of draft picks, we do have a rule. You can trade draft picks. That's completely okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But you cannot have an uneven amount of draft picks spread out amongst the league. So you can't trade 2 or 3 draft picks this year to another team for 2 or 3 draft picks next year. They have to be within the same year. So somebody can't have 18 picks while somebody else has 12. I think that's mainly just how Yahoo works. But that's just something that we have to that we enforce in terms of trade and trading picks. So you don't see any lopsided drafts in terms of the amount of picks that anybody gets in any given year. The second thing in regards to draft picks is with keepers. So we incorporate a 2-round keeper penalty for any player that you wish to keep the next year. So if somebody is kept in the 7th, you get to keep them in the 5th the next year. The only exception being that if they are drafted or were kept before the 3rd round, they automatically go back into the pool. So if you have somebody in the 2nd round, you can't keep them in the 1st. The next year, they go right back into the player pool to be drafted again. So you can get somebody in the 15th and then keep them for roughly 8 years, 7 years. Or you can get somebody in the 3rd and keep them for 1 more year. But anything before the 3rd round, it won't fly. So that's pretty much it in regards to the nuances of our keeper league. There's a lot of keepers this year. I'm not exactly sure how many we had last year, but I have a feeling that there's a lot more keepers this year than we've had in years past. I think people are really banking on trying to find later value, even if it's not tier 1, tier 2 value. One thing that you'll notice in this draft is that we have a lot of people that are keeping kind of wide receiver 3s, wide receiver 4s, even running back 3 or 4s, people that are in kind of questionable positions. Instead of just throwing them back into the heap, a lot of people are keeping on to them. And I think a lot of that is just to have, even though it's speculative in a lot of these cases, you look at some of these running backs that are being kept that are probably fighting amongst 2 or 3 other running backs for possible first team reps. What we've seen this year is that people are more willing to hold on to those speculative pieces so that they have a better chance of keeping a potential starter for a longer period of time. Whereas in the past, I think most people, they'd pick them up and then kind of be like, they're only like, an RB2 and RB3 and throw them back. So especially, I think that might be specific for this year, because this year there's a lot of crazy things happening at the running back position. Wide receiver is still pretty stable. There's not as much crazy shaking up going on at the wide receiver spot. But I think this year people are a lot more bullish on the running back position. And I have a feeling that will reflect itself looking at my mock draft. So the last thing I want to do, I talked about how different our draft is compared to your more standard drafts because of the keeper aspect. Just to give you an idea of some of the players that we will not be seeing drafted in the first round that you might see typically. David Johnson, not available. He will be kept this year. Le'Veon Bell, not available. He will be kept this year. Odell Beckham Jr., not available. He will be kept this year. Mike Evans, not available. He will be kept this year. Devontae Freeman, not available. He will be kept this year. Jordy Nelson is not available. Jay Ajayi is not available. Jordan Howard is not available. Michael Thomas is not available. So right there, when you look at some of the top 15 players that you would find in fantasy football, and I just named off 1, 2, 3... Melvin Gordon is being kept. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 of the top 15 players are being kept. So you're going to see a lot of those people that normally you wouldn't see in the first round, barring Melvin Gordon, because he is being kept in the first round for this draft. You're going to be seeing a lot of people moving up into that first round spot that you probably wouldn't find otherwise. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And you'll see in the back end of round 1 and even into round 2, it's really starting to turn into a coin flip, because there's so much similarities, and it's really going to come down to people's personal preference. So with that, let's jump in to round 1. I'm going to have a sip of coffee. So, with this first round, it's very interesting because the first round draft pick originally was held by Marcos. Marcos traded back to the 6th spot, trading that pick to Scott of free AP. So he traded back to the number 6 overall pick. Scott moved up into the first overall pick, and Scott also traded away some of his second rounders. So Marcos gave him a little bit of fodder from some of his later round picks to acquire more second rounders and then trade back. The original intent was for Scott to land Ezekiel Elliott at the number 1 spot, and then the ban happened. The 6-game suspension that was handed down, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago? It seems like it was a lot longer ago, but I don't think it was. Came into effect and threw everything out of whack for Scott. This was somebody who was banking on having Ezekiel Elliott as his number 1 running back to be paired with Jay Ajayi originally. I ended up acquiring Jay Ajayi, and then after the Ezekiel ban happened, he also dealt Mike Evans to me because he felt like his season, for the most part, was at a loss. The last thing that he did was he dealt the number 1 overall pick to Matt Keiser of braggadocious 1-1. That trade in and of itself gives Matt Keiser 3 first-round draft picks, one of which will be used to hold on to Melvin Gordon at the 11 spot, and then he has another pick at 8 to go with that number 1 overall. The other picks that are going to be fairly significant, this also affected Robin of Fartapocalypse, who was also trying to trade up into that number 1 overall spot to make sure that he preserves getting 2 of his favorite guys. I think it was going to be AB or Julio. He might still get those depending on what Keyser wants, but it's all up in the air. So he has a consecutive 2-3 picks in the first round. So a lot of interesting things. Really interesting first round, and the fact that a lot of the talent pool that you would typically see is gone, and then you remove Ezekiel Elliott for about 8 weeks. It just slammed our first round. So let's go over the picks. The order, as of right now, who knows? There could be another trade. Keyser was talking about trading the number 1 overall pick, trying to deal that. I don't think anybody's really budged too much, but let's go through it. So picking first overall is going to be Keyser, braggadocious 1-1. At the 2 and 3 spots is going to be Robin Brown Ward of Fartapocalypse. At the 4 spot will be our commissioner, Nate Silver Siths. At the 5 spot, our last year's champion, Yo Soy Fiesta. That's Tim. At the 6th spot, trading back from 1 will be Marcos, Belching Beaver. Behind him, Baked Brie, the lady of the league, Bram Baldry, picking 7th, followed by Braggadocious 1-1. There he is again at the 8th spot. The 2-time champion and our new president, Joe, will be picking 9th. 10th will be a team has no name, which has now been changed to the Cat Whisperer. Matt Hughes will be picking 10th overall. Behind him will be Braggadocious 1-1 again at the 11th spot, followed by Tahir, the Teabaggers, at the 12 and 13 turn, going from round 1 to round 2. I'll go into round 2 once we get there, but first let's go ahead and look at this first round. So Braggadocious coming in first. Looking at some of the things, and this you're going to see a lot. I'm going to have a lot of variations for picks because it's not that simple, because you look at teams and some of their needs. So one of the things when you look at Matt Keyser's roster, probably the strongest running back core in our league. He has Le'Veon Bell and Melvin Gordon as his running backs. It's really hard to find another. Tim's pretty close because he has maybe the number 1 overall running back, David Johnson, as his go-to, and then Jordan Howard as his number 2 running back. So really, really good running back core there. And you could probably argue which is better. I think you're kind of splitting hairs, but the point being, those are probably the 2 strongest running back cores in all of football. And what I'm getting to is that if you're looking at this number 1 overall pick, he's not very strong at wide receiver. You're looking at the wide receivers that he's keeping this year. It's Allen Robinson, Cameron Meredith, Jarvis Landry, and Keenan Allen. Right? Keenan Allen could be great. I like him. I don't know if you would say that he's your number 1, though. Right? He's probably going to be your number 2. I think his floor is a wide receiver 3 with low-end wide receiver 1 upside. So that's pretty good. Allen Robinson, you can't really like what you're seeing in Jacksonville right now. And then Cameron Meredith, I think just by the fact that there's going to be 3,000 passing yards in Chicago and they got to go somewhere, he's going to get some of those, I think. But I don't think you're expecting much more than like wide receiver 3 type numbers out of there. So if you're looking at... he also has Ben Roethlisberger, who's going in for one last hurrah. So he's been known to have some pretty explosive monster games. So he's pretty good at quarterback. He wouldn't need to do anything crazy with quarterback. Running back, very solid. Conventional wisdom would tell you wide receiver. But here's the flip side. If he wants to roll the dice and he's feeling good about his draft, whatever work he's put in, whatever he thinks will be available to him at the wide receiver position throughout the rest of the draft, he could take Ezekiel Elliott, number 1 overall still, with the thought that he will be able to get him back week 8, week 9, I can't remember which one it is, and help him make a playoff push if he's able to hold the water and be in contention. Now, that would be I guess depending on your school of thought, the riskier option. But I'm going with best need typically in this scenario. And so I have him going wide receiver. I have him going with Antonio Brown, number 1 overall. Mainly because, like I said, there is a need for wide receiver. You could maybe make the argument that maybe he takes Zeke here and then gets a wide receiver at the mid part at the number 8 spot. I mean, who knows? It's Keizer. He could do anything. But I'm just going to say he goes with Antonio Brown, number 1 overall. And I don't know. He could take Julio. Point is, he's taking one of those wide receivers. I'm just going to say Antonio Brown because he has Ben Roethlisberger and Le'Veon Bell. Maybe he doesn't want that. I don't know. So Antonio Brown, number 1 overall, going to braggadocious. If he doesn't like having 3 players from the same team on the same offense, then he goes with Julio Jones. That being said, I'm going to change it. He's going to go with Julio Jones, number 1 overall. That means Robin will be taking a little bit more well-rounded approach with his picks at number 2 and number 3 overall. I originally had him going wide receiver, but since one of the big 3, Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, will be picked, that's going to move Shady up into his number 3 spot, and he'll be going Antonio Brown and Shady McCoy. And that'll help round out his team a little bit more. Pretty solid wide receiving core. If you look at Jordan Matthews, Devontae Adams, Brashard Perryman, if he can get healthy, not bad. And I think Julio Jones, kind of like with Keizer, helps round out that receiving core. I mean, Devontae Adams was really great last year. He was a red zone monster. Will he repeat this year? Who knows? And then Shady McCoy will also help round out the running backs a little bit more. It'll give him a lot more balance in his team. He has Rob Kelly. He has Tevin Coleman, C.J. Anderson, and C.J. Prosise from Seattle. This will just give him a very well-rounded approach to his team for the rest of the draft. He only has, I think, 2 or 3 other picks for the remainder of the draft. The rest of them are all keepers. But this will give him a solid base to start with anyway. You'll have you're kind of hedging the wide receiver position by having Antonio Brown. And then Shady, I think, will balance really well with Rob Kelly, Fat Rob out in Washington. And then you can splash Tevin Coleman or C.J. Anderson in your flex position. So I think that it's going to give him a little bit more balance instead of having the Antonio Brown, Julio Jones combo, which anybody would love. But I don't think Robin can be mad with getting Shady and Shady and Antonio Brown. So again, recap, first 3 picks, braggadocious goes with Julio Jones, Antonio Brown goes to Fart Apocalypse, Shady goes to Fart Apocalypse at the 2-3 spots. Nate Silver-Sith, our commissioner, drafting at the number 4 spot. He has a lot of needs this draft. Looking at his keepers, he has Spencer Ware as a running back for all speculation aside. He is the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then he also has Jonathan Stewart, running back out of Carolina, who has been insanely consistent over the past few years. Even though the offense struggled last year, he still was pretty darn solid. And I think he's going to be solid again. I think he's going to get... I'm going to equate this year to years of Frank Gore in the past, where he's not necessarily going to get the quantity of touches, especially since McCaffrey is coming in now and going to be taking away a little bit of that. But I think the quality is going to be there. I think that overall the offense can't be as bad as it was last year. People are back and healthy. I don't think they'll be one of the top scoring offenses like we saw, a few years ago when they made the Super Bowl run. But I think that Jonathan Stewart's going to be a really awesome RB2, RB3. And then if Spencer Ware can hold on to the position, we know what he can do in that offense. Another good RB2-ish type person. And so I would think that he would go wide receiver, but I don't think he will. I think he still wants to get a clear-cut number one running back. I think that the thought process is that he'll be able to round out the wide receiver position a little bit better in the next few rounds instead of the running backs spot, because Shady's already off the board. And after that, you'll be looking to, some combination of Fournette, Gurley, Lamar Miller. And outside of Gurley, I don't think Elliott has as big an affinity for Lamar Miller as he has in years past. And I think he wants just to get a clear-cut number one guy. Everybody's saying, DeMarco, he's up there in age, and he's got not a rookie anymore breathing down his neck, but he's going to get some touches, and I think that he will. But I don't think it's going to be enough to scare away DeMarco Murray, who's still... They've shown no reason why he should lose out on touches, because he's been an absolute beast. And the offense is so well balanced, especially this year. You see him in the preseason. They look really sharp. Mariota looks awesome, like possible top 5 quarterback good. Like, he is just carving dudes up. He just looks so sharp, and nobody's even getting close to touching him. I think that DeMarco Murray is primed to have another solid year. I don't think that he should be scared off by him. And I think that last best available running back, I think that'll go with DeMarco Murray at number 4 overall. Looking at the 5 spot, we have Yo Soy Fiesta, our returning champion. I picked his brain earlier in the year, and we were talking about who he likes, and I was surprised. I was thinking, he'll go with AJ Green. No, he's not going to go with AJ Green. He's going to go with Dez Bryant. And my initial reaction was, "What? You're crazy! You're crazy!" And we got to talking, and actually the past few weeks I've been thinking about it and doing this mock. I was looking back in past years, and he's finally healthy. I've been burned on him so many times, and I look back on some of my past drafts where I took him in the first round. And I really do think that he was probably, taking picks on him, I think 2 years in a row where he got hurt both years, really was a difference between me making a deeper playoff push or even winning a championship, because he only got 1 or 2 games in and then was hurt and was done. And so I was soured on Dez, but I started looking at it, that team, the Cowboys, never had the offensive line that they have now, with the running backs that they have now, with McFadden and Zeke. And Dak Prescott, I don't really know if he's a downgrade from Tony Romo. That was a big question, but we saw how well he did last year, one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. And Dez Bryant is a fucking monster in the red zone. I think that if Dez Bryant is healthy, he never really was a big yardage guy, but he's still been really solid. But Dez Bryant, if he plays like 14 games this year, 15, if you get a full year out of Dez, like no joke, it's like chalk, like 15 touchdowns. He's going to get you that. He won't get you, 1,500 yards or anything, but my goodness, Dez Bryant could have a monster year. He already has a good relationship going with Dak. You watch him in the preseason, he freaking peppers him with targets when they get into the red zone. Everybody knows it's coming, but you can't stop Dez Bryant because he's just an absolute monster. So I think that Tim will go Dez Bryant there. He said that he liked him there. I believe him. I really do. And especially looking at the potential if he can stay healthy, which he hasn't been able to do the past few years. But if he can, no joke, you're looking at like 1,100 yards and 12 to 15 touchdowns. The guy is primed and ready. Like, even though they have the supposed, tough schedule, so forth, I don't know. Like, somebody has to score touchdowns for the Cowboys. They're still going to move the ball. They're still going to throw it with efficiency. And Dez Bryant, I think, where Tim's going to score with him is with touchdowns. So I think Dez Bryant goes number 5 overall. So, and the other thing is that, like I said, Tim has one of the best running back cores in the league. Him and Keizer. And going with Dez Bryant will really help round out his wide receivers. Tim has a ton of keepers too. Looking at his wide receivers, he's going to have DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Jamison Crowder. So getting another, potential top 5 wide receiver, but you're at least getting, a top 10 guy with Dez Bryant. And to go with Michael Thomas, who I think Michael Thomas last year is probably what you're going to get again, probably like 1,007 type of deal. And then Jamison Crowder, which we'll see what happens in Washington with all the new goings-ons with coaching and offensive coordinators. But he had a very good year last year, and Corey Coleman in Cleveland on his bench was great. He was just great. And you have to think that he will be able to build off of last year and probably be a solid wide receiver 3 or maybe a wide receiver 2. So I think Dez Bryant, though, will help bring that stability. The number 6 pick overall, Belching Beavers, who could have, we had some things that were developed by Pat and other people in the league looking at keepers and picks and, looking at the number of round 2 picks and fairly decent middle of the first number 6 overall draft pick, trading back from number 1 overall. Marcos is putting himself in contention to compete for a playoff spot. And I think that where he goes with this, looking at his team, Marcus Mariota, like I said, could be an amazing year for Marcus Mariota. It really could be. But looking at his wide receiver position, he has Tavon Austin, Pierre Garçon, Doug Baldwin. So looking at that, you have to say, all right, well, Doug Baldwin is the leader of the pack for him. Pierre Garçon, I think it's a boost being in San Francisco. Getting the coaching staff that he does, I think that he's going to see a lot of targets. I don't know if the yardage and the touchdowns will be there, but he will be producing. And then Tavon Austin, I think it's still a great value pick when you're looking in that 15th, 13th round. But the fact of the matter is, I think we know what Tavon Austin is now, and he's just kind of a gadget, boomer bust type of wide receiver for the Rams. So I think, if anything, Tavon Austin might be more of a flex. And Pierre Garçon, that's pretty good. Doug Baldwin, very solid wide receiver. That's 1,008 right there. But I think that he really wants to help pop that wide receiver spot up into to upper echelon by going with AJ Green. He has no running backs that are being kept, but when you look at wide receivers, AJ Green's kind of the last of the big wide receivers in terms of AB, Julio, Dez, AJ Green. I think he gets best available wide receiver and goes with AJ Green. I mean, you could make the argument that any of these people probably, when you look at rosters, I'm going to bring up Ezekiel Elliott again. You could say, well, why doesn't he pick up Ezekiel Elliott and then maybe try and trade him away? I don't think Marcos is trying to do that this year. I think he's actually going to try and make a push. He could do that. He could grab any of these teams could, if they don't think they have a shot to win, they can just grab Ezekiel Elliott, hold on to him, and deal him by mid-season or before they get eliminated from the playoffs. But I don't think he's going to do that. I think that he does have a chance to get there. You look at the teams that can, I'll just go ahead and go over this, the teams that could snag Ezekiel Elliott and hold on to him for a playoff push without trying to deal him. That would probably be braggadocious. Definitely could do that. That has the core, has the big players to be able to kind of hold the water. Tim can do it. A very good all-around team. Very, very solid. Tim could go that route if he wanted to. Joe could go that way if he wanted to. Who else in the first round? That might be about it. Like, you're looking at those three. Maybe Robin, if he's feeling saucy, could grab him in one of the first 3 picks. But any of the big guys, the past champions could do it, and Keys or braggadocious. I can't really do it because I don't have a first round draft pick. But if he ever did fall to me, I definitely would have picked him up. You can maybe make that argument that I have a team that could maybe also hold water till he comes back. But there's a lot of people that could pick him and stash him on their team. But 8 weeks is a long time. And there's a lot of people that can go and pick him up. Really, anybody can pick him up and look to trade him. But I don't think Marcos is going to do that. I think he's going to go with AJ Green to bring that wide receiver core to the next level. So it'll give him Pierre Garçon, Doug Baldwin, and AJ Green as his wide receivers. And then he's going to have to do a deep dive and hit on some running backs. Looking at the number 7 spot, Brian Baldry, Baked Brie. This is pretty obviously. She finished second last year, lost to Tim in the championship. She made a huge run. It didn't work out for her. She doesn't have the keepers to really make a championship run or a playoff run. It is fantasy football. Who knows? She only has 4 keepers. She could hit on like all of her picks and have an amazing team. But I think if you read the tea leaves, it's probably not going to be her year. And that's where I think Ezekiel Elliott goes. I think Ezekiel Elliott goes to Brienne at number 7 overall. And she'll be looking to deal him at some point in the year. I think she'll kind of just hold him. And people, when he's getting ready to come off that bye week into suspension, will really make a play for him. But I think that's where Ezekiel Elliott goes. I think number 7 overall, if nobody else picks him up before then. I think the 7 spot is where he goes. And that's just going to be trade fodder to get a first or a second for next year or more. So I think that's going to be a key for Brienne's rebuilding, is getting Ezekiel Elliott. Number 8 overall, we have Braggadocious. He's back again, drafting in the 8th spot. I have him with Antonio Brown at number 1. And just to rehash, looking at his roster, that'll give him a team of Allen Robinson, Antonio Brown, Cameron Meredith, Jarvis Landry as his wide receivers. I think he still wants to hedge the wide receiver position a little bit more. That's where I think he's going with this. I think he's going to go with another wide receiver. There's nobody else really that I think he would want in terms of running backs. I think he's feeling pretty good about his running backs. And I think he's going to go with T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton led the league in receptions last year and yardage. Didn't quite get the touchdowns. But when you look at the possibility of Andrew Luck being out, et cetera, I don't think it'll really hurt him all that much. He's still going to get the targets. He's still going to get the yardage. It's not like just because Andrew Luck isn't there, he will be completely incapable of producing. They're still going to throw the ball because they have to. They're probably going to be behind in a lot of games. And with Moncrief out, possibly being hurt, they got to throw to somebody, and it's probably going to be T.Y. Hilton. And I don't think, you can make the argument that he probably won't have the kind of year in the first few games. But like I said, you're still looking at somebody that's going to get 150 targets and 100 receptions, and he'll get you, anywhere between 5 or 7 touchdowns. But that'll be a solid wide receiver too. I don't know if he'll get the yardage. I don't think he'll get the 1,500 yards. When Andrew Luck does come back, we don't know what that timetable is. It could be week 1 or week 2. Even if you miss out on 2 weeks of Andrew Luck, that's another thing where it's your team is still good enough to be able to carry the fact that T.Y. Hilton, okay, maybe without Andrew Luck, maybe he's just producing wide receiver 3 numbers, but when Andrew Luck comes back, he's back to being a number 1 guy. So that's where I think Keyser goes with his second pick in the first round. I think he gets T.Y. Hilton. That's what I think that he does. He has the best proven track record. You could make the argument, maybe he gets Amari Cooper, maybe he gets Gronk. Maybe. I don't think that's something that he would do, especially looking at the fact that he's keeping a tight end. I just think that you really want to hedge and make that wide receiver position on your team just as good as your running backs. I think your running backs are pretty solid. Wide receivers, a little questionable, and I think T.Y. Hilton brings a little bit more stability to that. You can make the argument, like I said, go get Gronk, but he has 2 tight ends that he's keeping, Austin Hooper and Jimmy Graham. If you want Gronk, go get him. Have 3 tight ends. Have a ball. It should be a lot of fun. So that's where I think Braggadocious is going. He's going with AB, T.Y. Hilton, and then, like I said before at the top of the podcast, Melvin Gordon is going number 11, a few picks later to him. So Joe at the number 9 spot. This is where everything gets muddled. People are asking me, who do you got going? This from here all the way through the second, barring the keepers in the second round, is it could go so many different directions. It could absolutely go so many different directions, and it makes it really tough. You could just look at just so many different facets. But you look at Joe's team. Joe has a really, really good wide receiving core. Odell Beckham Jr. and Jordy Nelson and Emmanuel Sanders. Right there you got 2 wide receiver 1s and a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside in Emmanuel Sanders. So you have to like that. Stephon Diggs is going to be an amazing flex option. He has 2 tight ends. He has Eric Ebron. He has Tyler Eifert. Tyler Eifert, when he's healthy, is top 5 guy, top 3 tight end, maybe, depending. Has a great rapport, and Andy Dalton does a great job. Eric Ebron, it seems like every year it's this is going to be the year, this is going to be the year, this is his 3rd year. This could be the year for him. Who knows? He's part of a great offense, has a great quarterback. He's kind of the guy right now in terms of tight ends. Maybe this is going to be the year where he figures it out. Joe could go and get Gronk here. He could go get Gronk, drop Ebron and just have Gronk and Eifert do the Tahir strategy, start 2 tight ends. Worked against me. Tahir beat me with 2 tight ends. Super embarrassed, but it happened. But where things are a little bit fishy are with running backs. He has Carlos Hyde, which could be good. I think Carlos Hyde is a very solid RB2. LeGarrette Blount, even though things are a little fishy in Philly, it's not as Thomas Rawls is another running back, and I think him and LeGarrette Blount, it's what exactly are their roles? How much are they going to play? I think it's pretty apparent that I think LeGarrette Blount's going to be the first and second down back in Philly. Probably the goal line back too. And then Thomas Rawls, he's the best runner in Seattle, but it's Thomas Rawls. I don't know. He gets hurt all the time, and it's just really tough to gauge. But point is that I think, like I said, I'm going by need, really. And so I look at need, and I think running back. And before it was, you looked at, could be Lamar Miller, could be Leonard Fournette, Todd Gurley. This is where you could see Christian McCaffrey go here. I have Todd Gurley here. But I just don't know. I'm looking at hot take. I think Christian McCaffrey is going in the first round in our draft. And this is where it's tough. This is what I'm talking about. I'm trying to do my mock, and there's so many players I feel like I can switch around. You look at all these running backs. Let's just look at some of the running backs that are available right here. Todd Gurley. You saw how amazing he was year one. Before he got hurt, he was absolutely phenomenal. Last year, he was absolute garbage. This year, who are we going to get? We don't know. How much better are they now with a new coaching staff? They did upgrade the wide receiver position a little bit, going out and getting Sammy Watkins. I think that's going to help things, maybe keep defenses honest. And then I guess, do you buy into Jared Goff? I think that when you look at Todd Gurley and you look at Lamar Miller, you're really looking at not much them and their ability, because they have the ability, but can they get the help at quarterback? Can whoever the heck's going to be the Texans quarterback, can they keep defenses honest by actually throwing the ball to their wide receivers and not allowing 8-9 guys to come into the box to play the run? That's what you're looking at here. If you think they can do that, if you think that Todd Gurley and Lamar Miller are going to get far better quarterback play than they have in years past, I easily think that you could see Todd Gurley or Lamar Miller go at this spot at number 9. If Joe believes in that. If Joe thinks, yeah, they're going to get it together. I think we saw the worst of Todd Gurley last year. I think we saw the worst of Lamar Miller last year, barring injury. I think that's their floor. And now what everybody's asking is, can they get up off that floor and can we see that ceiling? So I'm gonna say Todd Gurley goes 9, but my gut is saying Christian McCaffrey. My head is saying Todd Gurley. So I think that Christian McCaffrey could go 9 right here. At the 10 spot, a team has no name, which is now the Cat Whisperer. Team has no name, sitting here at the 10 spot. All right, looking at his team right now and his needs, he has Tom Brady as quarterback, arguably one of the best fantasy quarterbacks this year. Not Demaryius Thomas. Kenny Britt, Mike Gillespie, Devontae Freeman, and Ty Montgomery. So you look at his running backs, that could be a really good running back core. Devontae Freeman is an RB1. Mike Gillislee in New England, he just got healthy again. He's back in camp. He had like a hamstring thing going on. It can be a little frustrating owning those New England running backs because they could have like 4 or 5 on their roster and you really don't know what the heck you're going to get any given week. But you do know that they brought him in to kind of be that LeGarrette Blount. He's not going to get 300 carries like LeGarrette Blount did last year. He's not going to get the 300 touches. That he could, who knows? But I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. But you know that he's going to be that first, second down running back. He's going to be the short yardage guy. He's going to be the red zone guy. And you saw last year with LeGarrette Blount that had like almost 20 touchdowns. You're not going to probably get that much, but if this is an offense that's going to move the ball, they're going to be down in the red zone. And as a flex option, or maybe an RB2, Gillislee could be an awesome touchdown vulture. He could be really, really good. Because he's probably only going to be really competing with Gronk for touchdowns down in the red zone. That's probably his biggest threat. So really good pickup. And Devontae Freeman should still produce very well. And Ty Montgomery bulked up 20 pounds. They're saying good things about him. He's battling some sickle cell stuff. But people are really big on Ty Montgomery this year. So really solid running backs. And Kenny Britt right now, holding down your wide receiver core, makes me think wide receiver is going to be his biggest need. And this is another, like I said, it's a muddled spot. You're looking at Amari Cooper here. You're looking at Brandon Cooks here. You're looking at Gronk here. Doesn't have a tight end. Probably I don't think you'd get into Demaryius Thomas and Sammy Watkins and stuff right here. I think that that's a little bit too early. But I think if you look between Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, those are probably going to be the two that he's looking at, and Gronk. I could see Gronk going here, but I don't think that he does, because I still think that even though Gronk is far and away the best tight end in fantasy, I still think that with such a gaping hole at the wide receiver position, I think that he's going to go wide receiver. And that really comes down to Cooks or Cooper. With Cooper, it's kind of like you're in year 3. The past 2 years, you've essentially been Michael Crabtree. Roughly the same amount of targets, roughly the same amount of receptions, roughly the same amount of yards, but a lot less touchdowns. He's essentially T.Y. Hilton light. And this is kind of the shit or get off the pot year for him. Will he be able to get you those 1,400 yards and push for double-digit touchdowns? Like, does he become the man? Or are you essentially taking a safe Michael Crabtree 2.0 T.Y. Hilton light that's going to get you 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns? That's what you got to ask yourself. When you look at Brandon Cooks, I don't think he's going to be all that different than when he was in New Orleans. He's going to have his games. He was very much feast or famine when he was with New Orleans. He's had his games where he's going to get you 30 points. He's going to have his games where he gets you 6. And I think it's going to be no different. It's like, well, which one do you like more? Do you like the thought of having a piece of that New England offense? Do him and Tom Brady find some special connection that sometimes he does find with veteran wide receivers that come to the Patriots and have their best career years? Who knows? But I will just go with the quote safe option and just say Amari Cooper, because we know his. It's hard to say because it seems like his floor is 1,000 yards and like 5-6 touchdowns, but also seems like could that be his ceiling? Is that just what he is? You know, he's not a big red zone threat. He bulked up, right? He's another guy that put on a ton of weight, ton of muscle. So you think, well, you know, what does that mean? Is he going to try and body people up in the red zone, which has been Mike Crabtree's specialty, you know, being a big physical wide receiver with great hands? It's really tough, but I'm just going to say Amari Cooper because seems like a more safe bet. So Amari Cooper goes 10 overall. Melvin Gordon goes 11th to Braggadocious. This is a keeper. Great pick at 11 overall. Definitely a first rounder. And then I have, listen, Tahir here at the 12. He's at the 1-2 turn, picking 12th and 13th. Looking at Tahir's team, he has Phillip Rivers at quarterback, Tyreek Hill at wide receiver, which is very solid. Some people are like, oh, wide receiver 1. I'm like, nah, let's pump the brakes. He's like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. John Brown. Who knows what the heck's happening with John Brown, Arizona. If he gets good, if he doesn't, in terms of his health. If he's healthy, I think he'd be great this year. If not, Kelvin Benjamin, actually looking pretty solid right now for Carolina. I think he might reestablish himself as being, you know, a 900,000-yard guy pushing double-digit touchdowns because he's looking really good right now. He's looking really good right now. Also has Marvin Jones from Detroit, who had a really good first 3 years, and then he also has Willie Snead in New Orleans. So, no big-time legit wide receiver 1, but also there isn't really, outside of Cooks, there isn't really another wide receiver that you probably want to go that could give you potential wide receiver 1 upside. You'll notice that I didn't say single running back. So I think the need is at running back. So he's going to go running back here. He has Travis Kelce as his tight end. I know Tahir loves his tight ends. You could make the argument that Gronk can go here. But I'm going off of need and just logic. And I think he's going to go running back. And I think this is where Christian McCaffrey goes. I think based off of these past few weeks in football, of preseason football, like Christian McCaffrey, regardless of the defenses that he's been facing, regardless of how good or bad they are, has really been helping his stock. So I originally had Fournette going in the first round. I don't anymore. I have Christian McCaffrey going in the first round at number 12 overall. The next pick, I still have a running back going here. I think Tahir's going to go running back, round out his roster. I think that could be tempted to get Gronk, and he could go 2 tight ends again this year. Very well could. But my thought process is that he doesn't have another pick till the 4th round. And then when you're looking at running backs in the 4th round, who's going to be there? You know, that can be tough to say. It really can. And so if you're looking at somebody that could give you possible RB1 upside, I think this is where he goes with Lamar Miller. And the reason being, I think that last year, assuming health, I mean, you can poke holes on everybody, and I used to do this a lot. I used to kind of say, oh, well, this guy could be hurt, and you can't do that. Like, because, I mean, if you look at everybody can get hurt. You just have to look at what their potential is. And I think that with Lamar Miller, you saw the worst you could get from Lamar Miller was last year. He cannot do, barring injury, he cannot do any worse than last season. Last season was, in terms of attempts, the most that he had ever gotten in his career. He had 268 touches with 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. with 40. He was targeted 40 times for 188 yards and a touchdown. So he got you 7 touchdowns last year. Or excuse me, 6 touchdowns last year. Now, I think like a lot of the rhetoric is, oh my gosh, he got all that work, but it was so horrible. He was so bad. And he didn't do anything with it. He only got 1,000 yards off of 268 carries. But look how bad that Houston offense was last year. That was one of the worst offenses that I've seen. And the fact is the offensive line still isn't anything necessarily to write home about, but they're better this year. You look at the surrounding offense, like I've said before, very good wide receivers, solid tight end and Fedorowicz. It's all about the quarterback position. If he gets even a semi-decent quarterback, they're going to move the ball. They're actually going to get into the red zone. Everybody should benefit from the offense if they get better quarterback play. It should open up lanes for Lamar Miller. I don't know if he'll quite get the same workload as he did last year, but I think that the quality should be there. I think you might see him more around 225 in terms of rushing attempts, but I think that the yardage will definitely be there, and I think that the touchdowns will get a little bump too. In terms of receiving, I don't know. He's been heavily targeted in the past game before when he was with Miami. In Miami, he was targeted 57 and 52 times in consecutive years. It was around 400 and 300 yards receiving. So he can be a wide receiver. I mean, you're looking at somebody that could potentially be a 1,400, 1,500 total yard running back with anywhere between 5 to 8 touchdowns. And I think it all comes down to, will the quarterback be better? I actually do. I think that the quarterback play will be better. And so I think that getting Lamar Miller at the beginning of round 2 will help solidify the running back core. So with that, the teabaggers will be looking at a roster like... So Lamar Miller, Christian McCaffrey will be there for his running backs. He'll pick up some other ones in the rest of the draft. Who knows what it'll be. But then he'll have Travis Kelce at tight end, who's a top 3 tight end. Very, very good. Tyreek Hill, John Brown, Kelvin Benjamin will kind of hold the water. I think Willie Snead could have a really big boomer bust year and work out of that flex spot. And then you'll be working the waiver wire trying to find another good running back or find one later in the draft maybe. But I'm just going off of need. Like I said, the want could be, let's go get another tight end. Let's do it. And that's what could happen there. Has Phillip Rivers at quarterback and actually could end up being his quarterback for the season. You look at the weapon. I don't know if he's had as many weapons around him as he has this year. At wide receiver, tight end, and running back, that offense is sick. Phillip Rivers. Typically what would happen is he would kill it for the first half of the season, and then they would kind of burn out as a team. Injuries usually were part of it. But they are so deep at every position now. I think Phillip Rivers is going to be a top 10 quarterback. I think he's probably going to be like 7th overall, but very solid quarterback position. You can make the argument maybe he goes with Rodgers here. But I think that just going running back will, best available running backs will be the safe bet. Belching Beavers. This is one of his picks that he got from Scott. He's picking second in the second round. Before I had him going with A.J. Green to kind of help round out that wide receiver position. Like I said, right now, Belching Beavers to compete is going to be looking to get the most bang for his buck for each of his picks. That's the mindset, right? So he has a lot of need outside of wide receiver. And he doesn't have any running backs. But the fact is, if he wants to get the most bang for his buck out of his picks, instead of trying to do a safe, rounded out draft, I think he goes with Gronk right here. I think that Gronk goes second pick in the second round, and that'll give him a very solid wide receiving core. A.J. Green, Doug Baldwin, Pierre Garçon, and then Tavon Austin in the flex, and then Gronk at tight end, who's going to be the best tight end in football. I think that's what he needs. I think that's what he needs to do, because there really isn't another running back that has that kind of potential. Because right now he's just kind of doing best available, and I think that Gronk is there. You could make the argument, hey, maybe he goes after Rodgers, but I think he is Marcus Mariota, and I think Marcus Mariota continues to get better. He won't be better than Aaron Rodgers, but Marcus Mariota should be sick. So I got Gronk going to Belching Beavers at the number 2 pick. This brings me at the number 3 overall pick, and it's so tough because when I'm looking at my needs, I made trades. I got Mike Evans. I got Jay Ajayi. I have a lot of wide receivers. I have a lot of running backs. I don't have a lot of tight end. Like, this is where, like, it's kind of best available for me. Like, maybe Gronk falls and I go for Gronk. In terms of does any of the people that I mention fall? Like, does Amari Cooper fall to me? Does Todd Gurley? Does Christian McCaffrey? The only reason why I bring it up is that I did get Jay Ajayi and Mike Evans, but I still think that my running back position is a little soft. Jay Ajayi could very well be top 5 running back, be up there, depending on the workload he gets. We're also going to see his first full season with an offense that does a lot of things in flux. And I was talking with Robin. I was like, I could have just traded for freaking Todd Gurley. Like, who knows? He had a couple monster games that really kind of tilted his point total this past year. So that's definitely in the back of my mind. He had a couple, 200-yard games, and that was awesome and all, but will that be regular Jay Ajayi? I don't know. And then Mark Ingram, I do like Mark Ingram, but it's a little bit scary, the fact that, they drafted a running back, they brought in Adrian Peterson. In the past, we've seen the coaching staff be volatile towards him. There were 2 games last year where he kind of got robbed from fantasy production because of fumbles, and I don't know what was going on with that. So I'm a little bit worried about my running backs. And then I saw Paul Perkins and the Giants offense. Their offense, outside of Odell Beckham, their offense looked absolutely horrible in the preseason games. So I wasn't feeling very good about Paul Perkins. And then the fact that the Jets are tanking, I think Bilal Powell's like their best player, so he should get some production. But my running backs are good. They're definitely not great. And so I could go with best available running back that goes there. I'm feeling pretty good with my wide receivers now. Now that I have Mike Evans, I think Terrell Pryor should be solid. But they're not exactly lighting it up right now in Washington too. I try not to put too much in the preseason, but you'd like to see something happening there with chemistry. Alshon Jeffrey did catch a touchdown, so this could be the year where he makes himself relevant again. I don't think he'll be the wide receiver 1 that we thought that he would be out of Chicago, but I'm hoping for him to be a solid 2. But I also, I have Edelman and Tyler Lockett might not be anything, but we'll see what happens now that he's healthy. But point being, running back, not super thrilled on. So it could be I could be looking at tight end. I could be looking at quarterback with Aaron Rodgers. Does Gronk fall that far to me? I look at the people behind me. Like, I'm not necessarily feeling Fournette right now. Brandon Cooks could be there. Like there is something very appealing about Brandon Cooks, but what I did was really for the sake of the draft. Looking at need, I don't have a quarterback, and highest rated player in rankings at this spot, minus all the ones that have been picked, would be Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers right there, and we'll see what happens with the people in front of me. Maybe somebody else will fall to me. Nate Silver Siths. All right, in the first round, we had him going and getting his running back. I'm going wide receiver right here. All right, he went and got not Todd Gurley. He went and got DeMarco Murray, right, in the first. And I think that kind of helps his running backs a little bit. I think he needs to go a little boom or bust with the wide receiver position because he only has J.J. Nelson, and I think he goes Brandon Cooks right here. Very much feast or famine, but he's going to have it. He's going to win you some weeks. He's going to have his 20, 30-point games where he just has 3 touchdowns and 200 yards, and it's crazy. And then he's going to have his bad games, and I think that's perfectly okay. Braggadocious. He's back. He's in the second round. Unless I did this wrong, this may not be completely up to date. But he had a big first round, bought a picks. I think that he wants to try and hedge the running back position a little bit more. He has Gordon, he has Bell, but he doesn't have a backup. And I think he goes with Fournette here because Fournette's going to get a lot of work, and he could be a good flex or a good short yardage, RB2. But it could be, and it's like, does he like Delvin Cook right here? Does he like Demaryius Thomas right here? Does he look Marshawn Lynch? Like, you look at situations. I mean, I don't know how long I've been going on the podcast right now. Yeah, I'm already over an hour because there's so much speculation, and all I do is freaking speculate. I'm just going off of strictly best available talent is kind of what I'm doing by need, like I've been saying, and I think Leonard Fournette is that. I think Leonard Fournette goes there. Belching Beavers, again going boom or bust. I have him going. He has 2 consecutive picks. I think he goes running back. I think he goes Dalvin Cook and Marshawn Lynch. I think those are the 2 biggest boom or bust. Could win him a division. Could get him into the playoffs. Dalvin Cook could end up being the explosive running back, catching passes and running, breaking up big plays. Not down, but up in Minnesota. Marshawn Lynch, we don't know about Marshawn Lynch. He has a year off. Some people think it's a positive. Some people think it's a negative. One thing for sure is that the dude is an absolute load. And when it comes to short yardage, and especially goal line, he's probably going to be getting those 6 points. And I think that this is an offense that, maybe they don't have that great of a defense. Maybe they're trying to run the rock a little bit more. Maybe they're trying to grind out games a little bit, keep that clock going, keep the defense off the field. Because they don't have a very good defense this year. But, Marshawn Lynch, he's that wild card that could end up being amazing. He could end up not collecting a check back home in Oakland. But I feel like boom or bust. Marshawn Lynch, Dalvin Cook. Brings me to the Cat Whisperer. Right, so when looking at the first round with the Cat Whisperer, I had him going with Amari Cooper. I still think that he needs to go wide receiver again to round out that team. I think his running backs are still fine. So I'm going with Demaryius Thomas, he was with an elite quarterback. He was an elite wide receiver, but the sad fact of the matter is that he doesn't have an elite quarterback, but he's still a very good wide receiver. And he's more of a wide receiver too. But he's still going to get you like 1,000 yards and get you a couple touchdowns. and he can have big games. So I think pairing him with Amari Cooper, and then depending on how much you like Kenny Britt, that can be your 3 wide receivers, or you can go get somebody a little bit later. But I think that's where he's going to go with Demaryius Thomas right there. Because even though, who knows? The running game is supposed to be better this year. Offensive line is better this year. He's really outside of Emmanuel Sanders, the only other major target, and he gets a lot of targets. So better offense this year, still have a really good defense. I think Demaryius Thomas is still primed for another good year. This is where we get into the keepers now at the 9, 10, and 11 picks of round 2. Nimbly Bimbly Joe was picking Jordy Nelson here in the second round. He's got to love that. And then I have Mark Ingram at the 10 spot, and then Mike Evans at the 11, making the 12th and final pick of the second round, being by the Belching Beavers. And I have him going with Amir Abdullah. I do. The reason being, even though he has Marshawn Lynch, even though he has Delvin Cook, Amir Abdullah is another one of those kind of wild card running backs who we don't really know what we're getting out of him. Last year, he played like 1 or 2 games and looked really, really good in those 2 games before he got hurt. And then you didn't get to see him again. So you have a rookie year where it was and then a nice little flash at the beginning of last year that maybe could hint at his potential. I think that's where he has to go at the end of round 2 before we hit the third round. There's still going to be some good value there at round 3. But in terms of boom or bust, I have him going with Amir Abdullah. And also because he's the highest ranked, one of the highest ranked people at that point. So there's our first 2 rounds. I mean, you look at all the people that could sneak into round 2. I mean, Mike Crabtree's still there. Joe Mixon is still there. Golden Tate, Sammy Watkins. It all depends. Like, I could take any of those guys at the second round, depending on how I feel about my team, and it's all about how you feel about certain situations. Golden Tate, after week 6 on, was the number 3 wide receiver in all of fantasy football last year. Put up like 900 yards after week 6. Absolutely sick. Will he get a full year out of that? If you do, he could be a round 2 guy. Mike Crabtree, you know what you're getting from him. A lot of red zone targets, 1,000 yards, 7, 8, 9 touchdowns. That's Mike Crabtree. Sammy Watkins, I was really bummed to see him go. I had him. He was a guy that I was targeting in round 2, before he left Buffalo. Now it's, do you buy into the St. Louis Rams? Do you buy into that offense? Do you buy into Jared Goff? He still has to go and face Pat Pete twice. He still has to go and face the Seattle secondary twice. But do you believe in him? You know, Doug Martin, Joe Mixon, all these people are still there. All of them, I've made the argument and I've looked at different scenarios, and I've at one point or another had all of these people going in the second round. So this draft is going to be crazy. Outside of probably the first 6 picks, I may be completely wrong. Who knows? Zeke could go earlier. Zeke could go later. I've had instances where Zeke falls to Joe. Joe picks him up. I've had situations where Grunt goes in the first round. I don't know. I'm very confused, but I'm also very excited. And this being a draft, a mock draft, speculatively based on the need of teams, could still be completely wrong. Somebody could think, I don't need to get a running back right here, because I know that there will be somebody that I like better later on. Or I'll take a gamble on somebody later on, because I want to get this guy here in the first. I want a 4th or 5th wide receiver. I don't know. All I know is that my voice is going hoarse. My throat hurts. Gotta finish this coffee. And I'm just excited. I'm ready to go. This should be a fun week. It should be a quick draft. Ton of keepers. Going to be at the commissioner's house. Going to be doing a live broadcast of the draft as it happens. We might even do some stuff afterwards. And, of course, we're going to do our draft recap episode right after we're done with the people that are there, asking them about their draft, what they thought of it. And if you're a fan of keeper leagues, this should be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a heck of a year. I really do. I think it's going to be a heck of a year. Thank you guys so much for listening. Sorry this went long. Like I said, I started talking about variables and who could go where and what to do. It's too hard to tell. I've been talking with people in the league. They're like, who do you think is going here? I was like, I don't know. This is just what I did last night. Doing some prep because I knew I had to do it today. We'll see what happens. All right, I'll do a little game and I'll see how I do, and I'll give myself a point for each correct guess outside of keepers. So, and who knows? Maybe the first round draft pick gets traded. The first overall draft pick maybe gets traded by Sunday. Who knows? I just know it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for listening. Hit me up on Twitter at Peter Livingston. Shoot us an email on ffdynastypod. Share with your friends. Have them listen. Everybody can learn a little bit from this. I'd like to think. Anyway, thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you later.